gather round, gather round. When the storytellers calls Yenu, what do you say? Yesa. And when I say long, long ago, you say? In the time of our ancestors. Very good. Now settle in, for I have a tale that will teach your hearts and tickle your minds. Long, long ago, in the time of our ancestors, when the baobab trees first learned to grow upside down and the guinea fowl got their spotted feathers, there lived the trickster spider Anansi in the great forest of Ghana. In those days, the world was very different from today. The sun rose in the west and set in the east, rivers flowed uphill, and all the wisdom in the world belonged to one creature alone, Anansi the spider. Yes, you heard correctly. Anansi kept all wisdom locked away in an enormous calabash gourd that he hung from the ceiling of his web house high in the silk cotton tree. Whenever someone needed to solve a problem, invent something new, or understand the mysteries of life, they had to climb all the way up to Anansi's house and beg him for just a tiny piece of wisdom. One morning, as the mist danced between the trees and the forest was waking up with bird songs and monkey chatter, 3 visitors came to see Anansi. First came Kweku the tortoise, slow and steady, carrying his house on his back. His shell was cracked from many adventures, and his eyes held the patience of centuries. Anansi, my friend, said Tortoise, breathing heavily from his long journey, the rains have not come to our part of the forest for 3 moons. The young ones ask me why, but I cannot answer. Might you spare some wisdom about the ways of weather? Before Anansi could respond, Adwa the rabbit came bounding through the undergrowth, her long ears twitching with excitement. Anansi! Anansi, she called, hopping from foot to foot. The humans have started making strange marks on flat stones and tree bark. They stare at these marks and claim they can hear voices from them. What magic is this? I must know. Finally, Kofi the young elephant trumpeted his arrival, his tusks still small and his movements clumsy with youth. Great Anansi, he rumbled, my father says I must learn to be wise like the elder elephants, but wisdom seems so hard to find. Could you teach me the secret of growing wise? Anansi looked down at his 3 visitors from his perch high above and felt his chest swell with pride. How important he was. How powerful. Without him, no one could solve any problem or understand anything. Said Anansi, stroking his 8 chin thoughtfully. You all seek my wisdom, do you? Well, wisdom is precious, more valuable than gold or diamonds. It cannot be given away freely like water from a river. He began to pace back and forth on his web, his 8 legs moving in a show-off dance. However, he continued, because I am generous and great, I will consider sharing tiny portions of my wisdom. But first, you must each bring me a gift worthy of such knowledge. Tortoise, rabbit, and young elephant exchanged glances. This was not unusual. Anansi always demanded payment for his wisdom. What gifts do you require? Asked Tortoise diplomatically. Anansi's eyes gleamed. Tortoise, bring me the laugh of a river that has never been crossed. Rabbit, bring me the footprint of the wind. And young elephant, bring me a handful of tomorrow's sunshine. The 3 friends looked at each other in dismay. These tasks seemed impossible. But Anansi, protested Rabbit, how can anyone capture the wind's footprint? That, said Anansi smugly, is for you to figure out. Wisdom is not for those who cannot overcome challenges. Return in 7 days with these gifts, or do not return at all. The 3 friends walked away from Anansi's tree, their heads hanging low. This is hopeless, sighed young elephant. How can I gather tomorrow's sunshine when tomorrow hasn't come yet? And how can I catch something as invisible as wind's footprint? Added Rabbit, her ears drooping. Old Tortoise, however, was thinking deeply. His ancient eyes held a glimmer of understanding. My friends, he said slowly, what if Anansi's impossible tasks are not meant to be solved, but to teach us something else? What do you mean? Asked Elephant. Think about it, continued Tortoise. We have been coming to Anansi for wisdom all our lives. But what if we already have wisdom inside ourselves? What if we just need to learn to trust it? Rabbit's ears perked up. You mean we should try to solve our own problems? Exactly, nodded Tortoise. Let us spend these 7 days not searching for impossible gifts, but using our own minds to find answers. Day 1, Rabbit went to observe the humans with their marked stones and bark. She watched carefully and discovered they were creating something called writing, making symbols that represented words and ideas. Through patience and observation, she began to understand this new magic. Day 2, Young Elephant spent time with the eldest elephant in the herd, asking not for answers, but for stories. In the stories, he began to see patterns and lessons that helped him understand how wisdom grows slowly, like his tusks. Day 3, Tortoise studied the sky, the wind patterns, and the behavior of animals. Slowly, he began to understand the signs that predict weather changes. Days 4 through 6, the 3 friends met each evening to share what they had learned. They discovered that by working together, sharing observations, and thinking deeply, they could solve problems they had never solved before. They realized they had found something more valuable than Anansi's gifts. They had found confidence in their own abilities to think and learn. On the 7th day, the 3 friends returned to Anansi's tree. But instead of coming as beggars, they came as equals. "Well?" demanded Anansi, looking down from his web. "Do you have my gifts?" "We do not," said Tortoise calmly. "Then be gone," snapped Anansi. "I told you not to return without them." "Wait," said Rabbit, stepping forward. "We may not have your impossible gifts, but we have discovered something wonderful. We have learned to find wisdom within ourselves and each other." Young Elephant nodded. "We solved our own problems, Anansi. I learned that wisdom grows through experience and listening to elders." Rabbit discovered how human writing works through careful observation. And Tortoise learned to read the signs of weather in nature. Anansi was stunned. "Impossible. I own all the wisdom. Without me, you cannot know anything." "That's where you're wrong, friend Anansi," said Tortoise gently. "Wisdom isn't something that can be owned like a calabash full of palm wine. Wisdom grows when it's shared, when minds work together, when creatures learn from experience." Anansi flew into a rage. His 8 legs trembled with fury. How dare these simple creatures claim they could find wisdom without him? "I'll show you," he screeched. "I own all the wisdom, and I'll prove it." He scrambled up to his rafters and began untying the enormous calabash that contained all the world's wisdom. His plan was to pour it all out and show them how much he possessed. But Anansi was so angry and flustered that his 8 legs got tangled up. As he struggled with the heavy calabash, trying to lift it down, his web began to shake and sway. "I'll show you all the wisdom," he shouted, pulling at the calabash with all his might. Crack! The rope snapped. Crash! The enormous calabash fell from the great height, tumbling through the branches, bouncing off leaves and vines, spinning end over end until... Smash! It shattered into 1,000 pieces on the forest floor. What happened next was the most beautiful sight the forest had ever seen. All the wisdom that had been trapped inside the calabash burst forth like golden light. It swirled up into the air like glittering dust, like stars dancing, like fireflies celebrating. Some wisdom settled into the flowers, which is why bees became so clever at making honey and finding their way home. Some wisdom drifted into the rivers, which is why fish became so good at swimming upstream and finding the best places to lay their eggs. The winds caught much of the wisdom and carried it across the world. Some settled into the hearts of children, which is why they ask such amazing questions. Some settled into the minds of elders, which is why their advice is so valuable. Much wisdom settled into the spaces between creatures, which is why when we work together and share ideas, we can solve problems that none of us could solve alone. And yes, some wisdom even settled back onto Anansi himself, but now he had to share it like everyone else. From that day forward, the world changed for the better. No longer did creatures have to make long journeys to beg Anansi for scraps of wisdom. Instead, they learned to look for wisdom everywhere in the patterns of spider webs, the songs of birds, the stories of elders, the questions of children, and the solutions that come when friends put their heads together. Anansi, at first, was heartbroken. He sat in his repaired web feeling sorry for himself. But slowly, he began to notice something wonderful. Even though he no longer hoarded all the wisdom, he was actually learning more than ever before. Other creatures would visit him not to beg, but to share their discoveries and insights. Through these exchanges, Anansi's own understanding grew deeper and richer. Tortoise became the best weather predictor in the forest, helping all creatures prepare for storms and droughts. Rabbit became a bridge between humans and animals, understanding both worlds. Young Elephant grew into a wise leader who always remembered that true wisdom comes from listening to others and learning from experience.